Hey guys, tonight we're slipping past the marble columns and torches of public Rome and ducking into a narrow passage hardly anyone remembers existed. They called it tabularium in the day, dusty record rooms under the Senate. But behind some of those walls there were smaller, more secret chambers, where scrolls of laws too delicate for daylight were kept. We're going to wander in there together. The wax smells faintly of smoke. The parchment feels warm even in the cool air. This is the Rome that never made it into your schoolbook, the Rome of hidden clauses, forbidden decrees, bizarre punishments, and whispered names. Some of them were so harsh that you'd probably tap out before the first page. Seriously, you wouldn't survive a week under these codes. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening in some far-off place or at a strange hour, drop a comment telling me where and when you're tuning in from. I love picturing the little constellation of glowing screens out there. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing on rough travertine stone just outside the Forum, but not in the open plaza where vendors sell figs and magistrates shout verdicts. You slip into a low doorway beside a column, carved with eagles. Inside, the ceiling drops, the air cools. Wax-sealed scrolls sit on shelves like sleeping snakes. Your fingers brush a label, Lex Julia de Adulteriis, one of the most infamous laws, full of punishments the public thought were moral, but in practice could ruin a life. Historians still debate how consistently it was enforced, but the very fact it existed tells you Rome's public virtue was backed by private menace. You move deeper. A single oil lamp hangs on a bronze hook, casting golden teardrops across the floor. Somewhere above, hoofbeats echo. Down here, only the sound of your own sandals. The scent is a mixture of frankincense and something metallic, iron filings. It's used to keep rodents away from scrolls, maybe. You imagine a scribe sneaking down at night to copy a decree for a senator who wants leverage on a rival. The Romans loved their laws, but they also loved hiding loopholes inside them. It's like reading the fine print of a credit card contract, except the penalties could be exile or death, instead of a late fee. On a low table sits a wax tablet, etched with a case summary. A baker accused of mixing chalk into bread, fined and absurd sum, then paraded in the Forum wearing a millstone around his neck. That's not a metaphor. That's an actual penalty recorded in one dusty line of the digest. Other citizens watched and laughed, but the note in the margin says the crowd murmured that the punishment was excessive. Even then, public opinion mattered, though only as a whisper. Past the table, a staircase winds down to a deeper vault. The steps are narrow, the stone damp. Your hand slides along the wall. You feel little gouges where someone once carved initials. Down here, the laws get stranger. The Romans codified everything. Who could wear purple stripes? Who could sit on which row at the games, even what names slaves could take after manumission. Some of these rules were enforced fiercely for a season and then forgotten. Others lingered, for centuries like cobwebs. Scholars still argue whether the Lex Annonae was a noble attempt at food security or a tool to starve political opponents. A gust of cooler air brushes your cheek as you pass an archway into a smaller room. The shelves here hold nothing but thin papyrus sheets sealed in lead tubes. You uncap one and find a diagram, like a map but of the Forum itself, little dots marking places where punishments could be carried out. Whipping post, auction block, temporary cage for offenders awaiting trial. Rome had no single prison system like modern states. It preferred fines, exile, public shaming, or death. Even the word carcer meant a holding pen, not a long-term jail. You picture a young senator, pacing above you, clutching his toga, thinking about how to weaponize one of these hidden clauses against a rival. You picture a Vestal Virgin trembling because a minor infraction might lead to being buried alive. A penalty so infamous, it still creeps into our language when we talk about living tombs. These aren't just dusty words, they're lives. Breath, choices, fears. A soft laugh escapes you. Imagine the mighty Romans, conquerors of the Mediterranean, arguing about whether a citizen could wear too much gold jewelry at dinner or how many guests he could invite. They codified etiquette like a teenager writing house rules for a sleepover. Power wrapped in pettiness always. You run a finger along a scroll labeled Lex Oppia and recall how it limited women's displays of wealth, only to be repealed after. Public protest led by matrons flooding the streets. The debate lasted days. Historians still debate what it really signified: proto-feminism, political distraction, or simply a tax measure. You move to a corner where a bronze chest sits half open. Inside, small lead tokens stamped with symbols. They look like game pieces, but were used as evidence or even as tickets for public distributions, grain, oil, or sometimes punishment notices. In your palm, they feel heavier than they look. The lamp flickers. This hidden archive is less like a library and more like a backstage for a giant theater. Above, Rome strutted in marble and sunlight. Down here, scribes and jurists arranged props of control. Every scroll you touch tells a story of someone's fate decided not by sword, but by claws. And yet, even within the iron discipline, there's a touch of absurdity, like a law fining people for throwing stones at birds in the city, or punishing bakers for undersized loaves, while senators embezzled entire provinces. As you breathe in the dry air, you realize how fragile it all is. These hidden laws were supposed to last forever, but they're now ghostly fragments on crumbling papyrus, and still they shape the modern codes we live under. The Roman obsession with order lives on in courtrooms, tax offices, dress codes. You're not just reading history, you're feeling its heartbeat under your fingertips. Somewhere deeper still lies a chamber no map records. You can sense it, a place where the most secret judgments were stored, maybe even rituals performed to give them weight. The lamp trembles in your hand as you step toward the darkness. The air smells faintly of myrrh and wet stone. A low hum vibrates through the wall like distant chanting. You're about to descend further into the hidden justice of Rome, where the strangest punishments await and where speculation becomes sensation. The steps spiral down tighter now, like a corkscrew drilled into the bedrock of the forum, and your palm squeaks faintly against the damp stone. The lamp flame sways, throwing dragon-like shadows across the wall. You feel a twinge of claustrophobia. This isn't the grand arena of the Colosseum. This is the digestive tract of power, where the empire chewed on its own secrets. The smell changes as you descend. Less incense now, more iron, a hint of old water. It's like walking into a Roman bath after everyone's gone home. At the base of the stairs, the passage opens into a low chamber braced with brick arches. Small, niches line the walls, each holding a different symbol painted in faded cinnabar. Scales, fasces, a lictor's axe, even a wolf howling at a crescent moon. Some are smudged as if deliberately blurred centuries ago. Historians still debate whether this was a storage room for ceremonial gear or a shrine to some obscure legal deity, but the atmosphere is unmistakably judicial. You're standing in the muscle behind the law. In the center of the floor lies a mosaic. It's cracked and muted but still shows a scene. A magistrate seated on a curule chair, arm extended, while a bound man kneels before him. Above the magistrate's head a tiny golden tesserae spelling out Vindex, Avenger. It's a word that once struck fear into Roman citizens accused of capital crimes. This mosaic was probably meant to intimidate anyone brought down here, like a corporate HR poster. On steroids, you crouch and run your fingers over the tesserae. They're gritty, cold. The story they tell is harsher than marble busts and triumphal arches. For all Rome's talk of civilization, punishment was a public spectacle woven into daily life. People were fined, exiled, flogged, or, in the most severe cases, subjected to penalties so elaborate they read like grim theater scripts. There's a little plaque on the wall, a bronze rectangle with punched letters, describing poena culi, the punishment for parricide. The condemned was sewn into a leather sack with a rooster, a dog, a viper, and an ape, then thrown into a river. It's so bizarre you think it must be apocryphal, but the Romans actually did it. Scholars still argue why those specific animals, symbolic. Punitive, pure humiliation, a laugh bubbles up in your throat. Imagine HR telling you your exit package includes a snake and a rooster. Yet for the Romans, this was the ultimate way to show a crime against family-violated nature itself. It's grotesque, but also strangely methodical, like a ritual experiment. You can almost hear the sack writhing in the Tiber's green water. On a low shelf nearby sit a row of small clay figurines shaped like the animals of that punishment: dog, cock, snake, ape. They're crude, almost childlike. Perhaps they were training props for lictors or votive offerings left by superstitious officials. You pick one up, the clay leaves a faint red smear on your fingers. The lamp's light glints off a thin strip of shell gold painted on the rooster's comb. Even here in the underworld of Roman justice, someone took time to gild a detail. At the far end of the chamber stands a wooden frame that looks like a hybrid between a loom and a ladder. Hanging from it are leather thongs stiff with age. This is no loom. It's a replica of the furka or forked yoke placed on criminals during public humiliation. Offenders were made to carry it around the city, arms strapped wide like a living coat rack of shame. You stand beneath it and imagine the weight across your own shoulders. The wood creaks as if remembering. You can hear faint splashes from somewhere beyond, a trickling echo. You follow it to a recessed arch where a narrow canal flows, a storm drain repurposed as a holding cell. Rusty iron bars cut across the opening. But beyond you glimpse a low space where prisoners might have been kept for a night before punishment. Rome had no permanent prison system, but it did have these improvised cells, dark as a cellar, wet as a bathhouse. You lean closer and catch a smell of salt and mildew. There's a fragment of graffiti scratched into the stone by the bars. Quis custodiet ipsos custodes? Who will guard the guards themselves? The phrase would become famous later, but here it feels raw like a plea. Even in the bowels of Roman power, someone wondered who was watching the watchers. You straighten and let the lamplight sweep the chamber. Each arch, each symbol, each tool is part of an architecture of fear. Yet there's a weird intimacy to it too, like stumbling into someone's old workshop. These punishments weren't just laws, they were performances meant to imprint on the collective mind. The sack with animals, the forked yoke, the mosaic of Vindex, they're like memes etched into stone and ritual. Historians still debate how often these punishments were actually carried out. Were they everyday occurrences or rare theatrical spectacles saved for high-profile cases? The sources disagree. Some think poenaculae happened only a handful of times. Others argue it was more common. Without CCTV or even reliable scribes, we're left piecing together hints from legal digests and gossip in letters. You imagine the emperor himself descending these steps once, inspecting his instruments of control like a chef checking his knives. You picture a magistrate rehearsing his speech before pronouncing sentence, adjusting his toga folds like a TV host smoothing his lapels. And you imagine a condemned man tracing the mosaic with his eyes one last time before the sack closes around him. Another little laugh escapes you. Rome conquered the world, but down here it looks like a cross between a basement storage unit and a theme park of dread. Power is never as sleek as it appears on the surface. It's messy, damp, and smells faintly of dog hair. You shift the lamp and see your reflection in the bronze plaque, distorted by the punched letters. It's like the past whispering, "You're part of this story too." Beyond the canal, a tunnel disappears into blackness, the air flowing out cool and slow, as if the city above is breathing through a hidden lung. You know the strangest punishments are still ahead. The ones rarely written down, the ones even senators whispered only after too much wine. You take a steadying breath, grip the lamp, and step toward that tunnel, your sandals splashing softly on the damp stones as you move deeper into Rome's hidden justice. The tunnel squeezes you like the neck of an amphora. You duck instinctively, brushing your shoulder against lime-streaked brick. The lamplight throws quivering snakes of gold along the ceiling. Somewhere ahead, water drips with a slow, patient rhythm like a heartbeat you don't own. You're leaving the official world of law for the private world of rumor. The floor tilts downward and then, unexpectedly, opens into a round vault. It's a room built like a cistern but decorated like a theater. Tiered stone benches carved directly from the bedrock, a shallow pool at the center ringed with marble. In the flicker of the lamp, the water looks like black glass. Above the pool, ropes and pulleys dangle from an oculus, their ends lost in shadow. You step closer. The marble edge is etched with words so faint you almost miss them. They're fragments, Turf punishments rarely recorded in the legal codes. Ad bestias virgis caedetur, equia ignis interdictio. But one line stands apart, inscribed with extra care. Secreta coescenda. Secrets to be restrained. It's as if this vault was used for cases the Senate didn't want the forum to see. A shiver creeps up your arms. You've read about these penalties in dry textbooks, but standing here makes them feel physical. The pool may have been a place of ritual immersion before exile, or a symbolic washing before execution. Some scholars think it was used for a punishment, called damnatio ad flumen, the condemned thrown into a river weighted with stones. Others whisper about stranger measures, psychological torments, sensory deprivation, or public shaming rites performed underground before a select audience. On one of the benches lies a bundle of papyrus, sealed with a blob of cracked red wax. You nudge it with your finger. The roll unravels just enough to reveal a heading, De moribus suspectis, about suspect morals. Names flow beneath in faded ink, some recognizable, some lost. A mosaic of whisper campaigns turned legal weapon. Next to the papyrus is a bronze oil lamp shaped like a swan. Its beak forms the spout. Its wings are half spread as if trying to escape. You light it from your own flame. The swan lamp burns brighter, casting new light on the far wall. There, painted in ochre, is a mural of masked figures circling a kneeling man. Each mask is an animal, the same quartet from the sack: dog, cock, viper, ape. But here they're human bodies with animal faces, almost like a ritual dance. One lifts a hand as though pronouncing judgment. It strikes you that this chamber isn't only about punishment, it's also about storytelling. The Romans were masters of making law into theatre. Punishment wasn't simply retribution, it was a message broadcast to the city, a cautionary play where the condemned played the villain. Even underground with no audience, they staged it for memory's sake. You sit on one of the benches. The stone is cold, the curve of it fitting your back. You imagine senators or priests sitting here, whispering about someone too embarrassing to punish in daylight. You picture a man led in blindfolded, the murmur of ropes overhead, the splash of water. No wonder later writers called these acts forbidden or hidden. They were built to be half-remembered, to haunt rather, than to be catalogued. On a small pedestal at the edge of the pool sits a tablet of white marble no bigger than your hand. Scratched into it in tiny letters is a proverb: Lex plusquam gladium timitur. The law is feared more than the sword. You touch the letters, they're shallow but sharp. It's the kind of line that could be a tagline for a modern thriller, yet here it's a quiet warning from the past. The air stirs. A faint current flows toward a narrow arch on the far side of the vault, where a second passage yawns. The smell of damp clay and iron thickens, but under it is a trace of something. Sweet myrrh, wine, it draws you on. The rope above creaks, as though something invisible shifts its weight. You stand holding both lamps now, the plain one and the swan. Their twin flames merge into a steady glow. Ahead, the arch's lintel is carved with two words: Nefanda. Hultra. Unspeakable beyond. It's an invitation or a warning. You take a breath. In the hush of the vault, your heartbeat sounds like a drum roll before the next act of a play, and then you step toward the arch, the soles of your sandals skimming. The damp stone ready to discover the strangest punishments Rome never put in the law books, but still whispered about in its subterranean halls. You stoop beneath the arch, and the stone above your head is cold enough to sting. The passage beyond curves like a serpent, its walls mottled with salt blooms, the ceiling hung with stalactites thin as styluses. The air is heavier here, damp and metallic, the kind that makes you taste iron on your tongue. Each footstep echoes twice, once in the corridor, once somewhere deeper, as if a second path runs parallel just out of sight. The tunnel widens abruptly into a long hall lined with niches. Inside each niche stands a bust, marble heads of famous jurists, consuls, emperors. You recognize Augustus, his eyes half closed like he's meditating. Trajan, his lips curved in a faint smile, and a few you can't name, their features worn to ghostly anonymity. Small plaques beneath list not victories but laws. Lex Julia de Adulteris, Lex Cornelia de Sicaris, Lex Fufia Caninia. The hall feels like a catalogue of human weakness disguised as marble dignity. Halfway down the hall, you find something stranger. One bust has no face at all, just a smooth oval where eyes and mouth should be. Below it, the plaque reads, De ignoto supplicio, about the unknown punishment. You run your hand over the stone, and it's perfectly polished, as if touched. Countless times by others trying to understand. Some historians think this represented a kind of blank space in the legal system, a penalty so irregular it was never officially codified. Others think it was a joke, a silent dare to future generations. Guess what we were capable of? You walk on, and the hall becomes a gallery of punishment tools, not weapons, but symbols. A bundle of rods tied with red cord, the fasces of lictors. A wooden tablet marked with the letters SP for sub poena, under penalty. A pair of wax masks used in funerary rites, but here painted with crimson streaks. They're laid out like museum pieces, but there's no glass, no labels, just the weight of presence. You pause at a recessed alcove where a mosaic stretches from floor to ceiling. It shows a public square crowded with spectators. In the center stands a platform with a single stool. On it sits a man wearing a placard around his neck. The Latin reads, Testis falsus, false witness. His hair is shaved in a checkerboard pattern, and children in the crowd point and laugh. This was one of Rome's most curious punishments, public humiliation that stopped just short of physical harm. Today it might look like a viral meme, but then it was a civic ritual. Some scholars still debate whether the checkerboard haircut actually existed or was a satirical flourish by later writers. Your lamp flickers as a faint breeze brushes your cheek. It carries a murmur like distant applause, or perhaps water moving through hidden channels. At the far end of the hall is a door of blackened oak bound with bronze bands. No lock, no handle, just a relief carving of a scale tipped heavily to one side. Above it is a phrase, Nemo securus sub lege arcana. No one is safe under a secret law. You push and the door yields with a reluctant groan. Beyond is a circular chamber smaller than the previous vault, but warmer, scented faintly with burned olive oil and herbs. The walls are painted with scenes of the forum, but the colors are muted as if dusted with ash. In the center rises a low stone table like an altar. On it rests a folded crimson cloth. You unfold the cloth. Inside are 4 objects: a wax tablet scored with frantic lines, a stylus bent at its tip, a small bell of bronze, and a key with no teeth. The tablet records a confession, at least fragments of one, from someone accused of violating a hidden law. The bell, perhaps, was rung to summon an official witness. The key that opens nothing feels like a metaphor. Entrance to a place that doesn't exist on maps. The stylus catches the lamplight. Its bend looks deliberate, a gesture of finality, as if the writer snapped it after finishing. You picture the scene, a citizen writing a confession under duress, then being led to an underground rite no one was supposed to remember. Yet here you are, piecing it back together like an archaeologist of shadows. You take the bell and give it a soft shake. Its tone is thin but piercing, echoing around the chamber until it fades into a hush. Something shifts under your feet, a mechanism or just your imagination. In the frescoes on the walls, you notice a new detail. In each depiction of the forum, a dark archway is drawn at the base of the Senate steps. You hadn't seen it before. Now it glows faintly, a painted doorway to match the one you just passed through. The sense of being watched returns, not threatening, more like curious, as if the past itself leans over your shoulder, wanting to see how much you'll uncover. You put the objects back under the cloth, fold it carefully, and step away from the altar. Ahead, a narrow stair spirals upward. The stone steps are worn in the middle, polished by countless unseen feet. The stair promises air, maybe light, but also the next layer of secrecy. You grip the swan lamp tighter. Your other lamp is burning low. The hall behind you sinks into darkness like a closing mouth. Up you climb, the scent of olive oil and iron, fading, replaced by something sharper. Smoke, resin. You can feel the temperature change with each turn. Rome's punishments were not just about pain, but about atmosphere, setting, stagecraft. You're walking through the wings of that theater, now on your way to the strangest act yet. You emerge from the stairwell into a courtyard no one should have built underground. Above you, a false sky has been painted on a domed ceiling, deep lapis blue with tiny gold stars, so vivid you have to blink to remind yourself it isn't night. Around the edges of the courtyard, columns rise like a grove of stone pines, their capitals carved into wolf heads bearing stylized fangs. Between them hang curtains of crimson and ochre, stiff with age yet still shimmering faintly under your lamp. The air smells of resin and smoke. A line of braziers stands at the center, each holding a small controlled fire. You can hear it crackling softly, like whispers layered atop one another. It's warmer here, almost cozy, and for a moment you think of a bathhouse. Then you notice the hooks along the walls, the iron rings set into the floor. This isn't a place for relaxation. It's a stage where law and punishment blurred into ritual theater. You walk slowly between the braziers. The painted sky overhead seems to shift with each step, the gold stars sparkling as though the ceiling is breathing. On the far side stands a raised dais with a wooden chair, not a throne, but something plainer, built for function, not comfort. Its arms are worn smooth, the grain darkened by centuries of hands. A plaque on the dais reads, Praetor Privatus, Private Magistrate. This was where judgments under hidden laws were spoken, away from the roar of the forum. Near the dais, a shallow pit lined with marble tiles gleams under the firelight. It's filled not with water, but with a dark, oily substance. Pitch, perhaps, or ink. A mosaic at the pit's edge shows a stylus falling into liquid. Scholars still argue about its meaning. Was this a ceremonial destruction of evidence, laws written and then dissolved, or a literal punishment plunging the hands of oath-breakers into scalding pitch to mark them forever? You imagine the hiss, the smell, the crowd leaning in for a glimpse. Rome didn't just punish, it performed. Along one wall hangs a tapestry almost rotted to threads. You lean close, careful not to breathe too hard. It shows a man in a toga standing on a platform. Below him, a crowd of citizens holds up wax tablets like mirrors, reflecting his face back at him. A punishment of reflection, of mockery. The caption, in fading Latin, reads, Speculum legis, the mirror of the law. Modern historians are divided. Some think it was a metaphorical teaching tool. Others insist it describes an actual spectacle where accused men were forced to confront their own image, multiplied by hundreds. It's eerie, like a proto-social, media-shaming ritual 2 millennia early. You step back and your heel clicks against something on the floor. Looking down, you find a small bronze token shaped like a wolf's head. One side bears the letters SPQR, the other a tiny scale. Perhaps it was an entry pass, or a coin paid as a fine. You slip it into your palm, its edges sharp against your skin. It feels like a password to another layer of secrecy. In the corner of the courtyard stands a door, low and narrow. Over it, a lintel carved with ivy leaves hides another inscription, Noli timere umbram legis. Do not fear the shadow of the law. The wood of the door is scorched, and as you reach for it, you smell resin stronger, mixed with something sweet. Maybe frankincense, maybe myrrh. The combination is dizzying, a perfume of both sanctuary and sentence. You push and the door opens inward to reveal a corridor lined with small niches. Inside, each sits a clay lamp shaped like an animal. Lions, owls, serpents. They flicker with ghost light, no wick, no oil. You trail your fingers along the shelf and the lamps dim one by one as you pass, like a hush falling over an audience. The floor slopes gently downward now, and the air cools again, the scent of resin fading into damp stone. Your mind drifts to the notion of hidden justice. Rome's legal system was famous for its publicness, laws carved on bronze tablets, cases argued before crowds. But alongside that openness ran a shadow system of secret punishments, private magistrates, rituals the Senate never recorded. The tension is palpable, a civilization that prided itself on clarity yet thrived on obscurity. You wonder if modern governments are really so different. Secret courts, classified rulings, redacted pages, they all echo here under the painted stars. At the end of the corridor, you find a half-circle of steps leading down to a sunken chamber. A single pillar rises from the center, topped with a metal ring. The floor around it is etched with spirals, each spiral inscribed with tiny letters. You can barely read. You crouch, squinting at one, silentium vincit. Silence conquers. Another reads, Confessio nocturna, night confession. The pillar looks ordinary at first glance, but the closer you get, the more you see faint scratches, like tally marks. Did someone record days, victims, confessions here? It's both banal and chilling, like finding doodles in the margins of a death sentence. You stand again and notice on the wall opposite a fresco of a door painted ajar. Through it you can see a garden with cypress trees under a moon. This isn't just art, it's a direction. Somewhere beyond this chamber lies an exit or a deeper entrance to another space entirely. Your lamp trembles in your hand, its flame thin now. The silence around you feels padded, heavy, like a thick curtain drawn over sound. You swallow and taste resin still on your tongue. Rome's strangest punishments aren't always the ones that left scars on skin. They're the ones that left people suspended between theater and reality, unsure what was ritual and what was pain. You move toward the painted door, fingers brushing the wall. The paint is cool and slightly grainy, but under your touch a small section yields like a hidden catch. You press, and somewhere inside the wall something clicks. A draft whispers out, smelling of cypress and night air, impossibly fresh for this underground labyrinth. You glance back at the courtyard one last time, the painted stars, the braziers, the tapestry of mirrors, and then step through the opening. The passage beyond is narrow and dark, but you can hear faintly the sound of running water. It's a comforting sound, like a fountain in a hidden garden, or a lullaby the city hums to itself. You follow it, the bronze token still in your palm, and the walls close in like a secret ready to be told. The passage slopes downward, and the faint sound of water grows clearer, a silver thread of noise winding through the hush. The air cools until goosebumps ripple across your arms. It smells faintly of wet marble and iron. You steady your lamp and keep walking. Your footsteps soft but echoing, as if another set of feet follows half a beat behind. At the end of the corridor, you arrive at a circular chamber, its ceiling low and domed, painted with a night sky again, this time with a crescent moon and clouds, rolling across like frozen breath. In the center sits a pool fed by a thin stream, flowing from a lion's mouth carved into the wall. The water is pale green, luminous in the low light, and mist rises from its surface like steam off a cup of tea. You kneel by the edge. The stone is cool under your fingers, smooth but etched with Latin you can barely decipher. Purgatio sub umbra legis, purification under the shadow of the law. This wasn't just a fountain. It was a ritual bath, a cleansing before judgment. People condemned to secret punishments were brought here at night, stripped of their public identity, and immersed. A few historians insist it was medicinal or symbolic, but others claim it was an early form of sensory deprivation, a way to soften the will before interrogation. The debate still flickers like the lamp in your hand. On a shelf above the pool stand small clay jars sealed with wax. You reach for one and roll it in your palm. It's light, almost empty, yet a faint sweet smell clings to it. Honey, wine, crushed herbs. Perhaps a sleeping draught, perhaps an ointment for wounds. The wax bears an imprint of scales and a stylized sword. You imagine a magistrate pressing his signet into the soft wax, just hours before some unfortunate soul was led. Down these steps. Beyond the pool, a row of stone benches curves along the wall. The seats are grooved where bodies sat waiting. Some of the grooves are deeper, as if carved by anxious fingers over time. Scratched into one bench, you find the phrase, vox tacit. The voice is silent. You trace the letters, the grooves, rough under your fingertip. Someone left their mark here 2,000 years ago, a last statement hidden in a whisper of stone. Your lamp flickers and throws moving shadows across the water. The mist twists into shapes, robed figures bending over. A kneeling man, a magistrate holding a tablet high, a servant with a towel poised to dry someone who may never step back into sunlight. You blink, and the shapes dissolve, only water and mist again. This chamber has been empty for centuries, yet it still performs its story for whoever enters. In a niche opposite the pool stands a marble statue of a veiled woman holding a set of scales, not the familiar Justitia, but older, heavier, the folds of her robe carved deep like cliffs. One scale pan is empty, the other holds a tiny bronze wolf. You think of the token still in your hand and glance from it to the statue. Coin and scale, wolf and law, symbols layered like palimpsests. Rome loved its emblems, but it also loved hiding meaning within them like seeds. You rise and approach the statue. Its base bears another inscription, this one more playful, Nemo supra legem nisi lupus. No one above the law except the wolf. You chuckle softly despite yourself. Even 2,000 years ago, someone carved a joke into the foundation of justice. Maybe a craftsman's quiet rebellion, maybe a magistrate's private wink. Either way, it's a reminder. Power dresses up as solemnity but still smuggles in humor. Behind the statue you notice a narrow stair spiraling down, its edges worn like a seashell. You descend, the damp air clinging to your clothes, each step echoing as though you're stepping into a cavernous heartbeat. At the bottom, the stair opens into a long hall lined with archways. Each arch frames a small alcove with a bronze plaque. Above it, the plaques read like a catalogue of obscure offences: somnum falsum, false sleep; osculum prohibitum, forbidden kiss; ludus nocturnus, night game. You stop at each, reading, imagining what these crimes meant. Some scholars argue these plaques are later additions, perhaps a medieval monk's parody of Roman law. Others insist they're genuine, a glimpse into the empire's hidden obsession, with controlling not just actions but dreams, gestures, even thoughts. It's absurd and unsettling. Rome at once grand and petty, like an emperor fussing over lamp placement before bed. You pause at one arch whose plaque simply reads Silentium perpetuum, perpetual silence. Inside the alcove, the floor is covered with mosaic tiles depicting closed mouths, some human, some animal. In the center sits a small stone chair shaped like a folded wing. The chair faces the wall, not the hall, as if whoever sat there was meant to look only inward. It's easy to imagine an accused person placed here, told to keep their back to the magistrate, waiting for a judgment they couldn't see. You step back, your own breath loud in the stillness. The hall stretches ahead, arch after arch, like a litany of forgotten rules. At the far end, a faint glow beckons, warmer than lamplight tinged with gold. You tighten your grip on the bronze token and start walking again, the names of secret crimes murmuring behind you like a chorus fading into the dark. With each step, the glow brightens until you can make out a heavy door of cedar bound with bronze bands. The wood is carved with waves and tiny fish, an odd motif for a subterranean court. Above the door, a simple inscription, Trans Flumen Legis, across the river of law. The smell of water is stronger now, fresh and metallic, like rain on stone. You push your shoulder against the door and it yields slowly, the bronze bands groaning like old music. Beyond lies another chamber, this one larger, lit by a natural fissure in the ceiling where moonlight seeps in. A channel of water runs through, the middle shallow but fast-moving, its surface glinting silver. Stone stepping stones cross it like vertebrae. On the far bank, you glimpse another set of columns and a raised platform draped in faded purple cloth. This is not just another chamber. It feels like a threshold, a place where all the hidden layers converge. You stand at the edge of the channel, the current whispering at your feet. Somewhere above, Rome's modern city pulses unaware. Down here, though, the empire still breathes in its sleep, its laws and punishments folded like origami beneath the marble. You take a breath of the cool, air-tasting minerals and memory, and step onto the first stone. The water rushes below, but you balance easily, the bronze token a warm weight in your palm. Behind you, the Hall of Forbidden Crimes recedes into shadow. Ahead, the platform with purple cloth waits, half in moonlight, half in darkness. You take another step, then another, crossing the river of law one stone at a time, and feel the story tightening like a drum, ready to reveal its next secret. The water murmurs under your feet as you step from the last stone onto the far bank. Here the air feels different, less damp, touched by a faint warmth like breath from a hidden furnace. The platform rises before you, its purple cloth frayed, at the edges but still regal, smelling faintly of old wine and ashes. Around it, columns carved with dolphins and lotus flowers gleam in the dim moonlight from the fissure above. It's as if you've crossed from a courthouse into a theatre, the stage set for some ritual that blurred the line between law and performance. You climb the shallow steps. The cloth hides a low altar of marble streaked with green veins, cool, under your fingers. Tiny bronze bowls are arranged in a circle on top, each holding something different: pale ash, crushed herbs, a single coin, a droplet of dried blood. Their arrangement is precise, like notes on a score. You sense a ritual in which every movement was choreographed, every object a line in a legal poem. A bronze plaque on the altar's edge reads, "Lex Somni," the law of sleep. You frown, your lamp flickering as you lean closer. This wasn't just punishment, it was judgment delivered through dreams. Some historians dismiss Lex Somni as a poetic metaphor, but others argue it was an actual procedure. Condemned individuals made to drink soporific draughts, placed under the care of interpreters who would read their dreams for guilt or innocence. It's outlandish, yet no stranger than the Empire's obsession with auguries and omens. You picture it, a prisoner brought here under cover of night, bathed in the pool, crossing the stream, then laid on this altar, lulled into sleep by herbs and incense. Around him magistrates stand in a circle, their robes heavy with saffron dye, whispering questions to the gods. As the condemned dreams, a scribe scratches notes onto wax tablets, visions of wolves, scales, rivers. The next morning, a verdict is announced, carved not from evidence but from the geometry of nightmares. At the altar's base lies a mosaic depicting a man lying on a couch, his eyes closed, a lion at his feet. Above him floats a winged figure holding a scroll and a torch. You trace the wing's outline, the tesserae cool under your fingertip. Was the winged figure a spirit of justice, or merely sleep personified? The ambiguity suits Rome's taste, for mixing metaphors and power. On a side table rests a small bronze bell. You pick it up and ring it softly. Its chime is high and sweet, lingering in the air like a memory of birdsong. The sound echoes off the stone walls, and for a moment you imagine robed figures turning toward you, eyes glittering in lamplight. Annoyed at your interruption, you almost whisper an apology to the empty room. You notice the purple cloth conceals something more. Pulling it aside, you find a narrow stair descending again, this time lined with murals of rivers and bridges. Each bridge bears a Latin name: Pons Ultimus, Pons Oblivionis, Pons Secretorum, the Bridge of Secrets. The steps are worn but clean, as if someone has been using them long after the chamber above was abandoned. Your hand brushes the mural as you descend. The paint flakes slightly, leaving saffron dust on your skin. The images grow darker the farther. You go. Bridges breaking, figures falling into water, then a final panel of a veiled woman rowing a boat alone under a black sky. The underworld's ferryman, perhaps, or a magistrate of the dead. You shiver, despite the warmth rising from below. The bottom of the stair opens into a vaulted hall, dimly lit by bowls of oil flame along the walls. The ceiling arches high, painted not with stars but with eyes. Hundreds of eyes staring down, each outlined in brown ink, the pupils dotted with tiny gold flecks. It's beautiful and unnerving, like being inside a giant watching mind. This must have been the heart of the ritual, where the sleeping law took its truest form. In the center of the hall stands a massive stone slab shaped like a bed, but raised on 4 lion's paws. Above it hangs a canopy of bronze chains, strung with bells no bigger than your fingernail. Even in still air they tinkle faintly, a sound like distant rain. On the slab lies a faded cushion embroidered with wolves chasing their tails. You run, your hand over the embroidery. It's rougher than it looks, as though stitched in haste. You imagine a condemned official, a thief, a rebel laid here, the bells chiming softly overhead, the magistrates chanting at the edges of the hall. A draught forced down the throat, eyes closing, body slackening. Perhaps he dreams of crossing a river, of a bridge, of eyes watching. By dawn, the magistrates declare him guilty or innocent based on those visions. Justice by dream, punishment by story. Some scholars think this is pure myth, a medieval monk's invention. Others point to fragments of court records mentioning verdicts of the night and judges of sleep. The evidence is tantalizing but never conclusive, like a curtain fluttering in a draught. You can almost hear the debate echoing through time, Latin footnotes scribbled in the margins of law books. Your lamp gutters and you set it on the slab. Its glow mingles with the oil flames, throwing your shadow long across the eyes on the ceiling. You wonder if you're being judged now, a trespasser in this hall of hidden justice. The bells overhead tremble faintly, though no breeze stirs them. You take a slow breath, steadying yourself, the bronze token warm against your palm like a heartbeat. At the far end of the hall, a dark archway gapes, unlit but marked with another plaque, Ingressus Veritatis, the entrance of truth. Beyond it lies a narrow passage descending still further, a seam of darkness under the Empire's marble skin. The sound of running water rises again, stronger this time, joined by something like a low hum. You can't tell if it's wind or voices. You stand at the threshold, caught between curiosity and the weight of centuries. The Hall of Eyes watches, the bells whisper, the mosaic bridges lead downward. You tighten your grip on the token and step forward into the archway, feeling the stone cool under your bare feet, the air thickening like honey as you move deeper into Rome's hidden laws. The passageway swallows you whole. Its ceiling lowers until you have to duck, and the hum becomes a slow, steady pulse like a heartbeat inside stone. The walls here aren't marble but rough volcanic rock, black and porous, absorbing the light of your lamp instead of reflecting it. A faint mineral tang hangs in the air, as though you're walking into the mouth of some underground spring. Each step leaves a soft echo behind you, and in that echo you imagine footsteps following. But when you pause, there's only silence. Your fingers brush along the wall for balance. The rock is warm now, almost skin temperature, veins of quartz, glowing faintly as if lit from within. You feel like you're inside a living body, the Empire's hidden circulatory system, pumping out judgments and punishments like blood. The floor tilts downward and soon becomes slick with moisture. Tiny channels cut into the stone carry trickles of water that converge toward a larger flow ahead. The hum swells into a chorus of low tones. As you round a bend, the passage opens into a cavern whose ceiling glitters with tiny crystals, catching your lamp's glow like frozen stars. In the center, a subterranean river winds past, dark and slow, its surface smooth as obsidian. On the near bank stands a row of bronze cages, each no taller than your waist. Inside them, nothing but dried herbs tied in bundles with red string. Their scent drifts across to you, sweet, bitter, and something like burnt honey, sleep-inducing perhaps, or hallucinogenic. This was preparation space, where accused men and women would be dosed before the dream verdict ritual above. You kneel beside one of the cages and read a tag still wired to it, Papava somnum, poppy of sleep. Another tag, Herba oblivionis, herb of forgetting. The handwriting is neat but hurried, Latin letters curled like vines. For a moment you're struck by how bureaucratic it all was, forms, labels, inventory, even at the edge of superstition. Some historians still argue these herbs were for temple healers, not courts. Others insist they were tools of judicial sleep. No consensus, only whispers. Across the river a platform juts out of the rock, and on it a massive bronze door glows faintly green with verdigris. Two reliefs are carved into its surface. On the left, a sleeping man surrounded by animals. On the right, a crowd of judges pointing at a single figure. Above, an inscription reads, Somnium Judicat, the dream judges. You feel a shiver of thrill because here the myth becomes metal. The ritual wasn't just a story, someone built a door for it. A narrow stone bridge crosses the river, its railing carved into intertwined snakes. You step onto it, the snakes' heads cold against your palm. The water below swirls sluggishly, reflecting your lamp like liquid glass. As you reach the midpoint, you pause, listening. The hum of the cavern blends with the river's murmur, and you think you hear voices. Latin phrases whispered just at the edge of comprehension. You lean over the railing, but the water's surface only mirrors your own face, distorted by ripples. A small niche stands at the far end of the bridge. In it, sits a clay cup stained dark at the bottom. Someone long ago drank here. You pick it. Up, sniff it, faint, earthy, bitter. You set it down quickly before the scent can crawl further into your mind. On the niche wall, another mosaic glints, a winged serpent devouring its own tail. Beneath it, a line of text, Nemo evadit, no one escapes. You press your palm to the bronze door. It's cool despite the warmth around you, the metal ridged from centuries of touch. The door yields slowly, hinges groaning like a beast waking. A thin rush of colder air brushes your face as it opens. Beyond lies a chamber lit by shafts of pale blue light, filtering from somewhere above. The floor is a shallow pool of water, steam curling up in lazy threads. The walls are lined with alcoves carved like sleeping pods, each large enough for a person to lie inside. You wade into the pool. The water is warm, smelling faintly of minerals and something sweet, almost like incense. Each step leaves ripples that catch the blue light and scatter it across the walls. In the first alcove lies a stone slab covered in wax tablets. You pick one up, its surface etched with dream symbols. Birds flying backward, a bridge without supports, a hand holding scales made of smoke. Next to each drawing a Latin note. Culpa, innocens, poena linea, guilt, innocent, lighter punishment. This was a ledger of someone's subconscious. A bell dangles from the ceiling, small and plain compared to the ones above. You pull the cord, lightly. Its tone is deeper, slower, like a sigh at the end of a long day. For a heartbeat, the hum and the bell align, creating a vibration in your chest. You imagine how a condemned person might have felt here, drugged, drifting, half aware, of voices around them, the water lapping at their skin. The magistrates not merely judges but interpreters of their innermost fears. Justice as dream analysis before Freud was even born. At the center of the room rises a dais with 3 steps. On the top sits a bronze basin shaped like a lion's head. Inside it, a faint trickle of liquid glows pale blue. You dip a finger. It's cold, numbing almost instantly, leaving a tingling trail on your skin. Maybe an old sedative mixture, maybe mineral runoff. You wipe your finger on your tunic and step back. Above the dais, a fresco shows a man stepping from a bed into a courtroom, his eyes closed, guided by a veiled woman holding scales. Behind the judges stand soldiers with fasces, the rods of authority. It's half myth, half reality, exactly Rome's style. You can almost hear a commentator from your own time chuckling about the first sleep court, making a podcast episode out of it. But here now it feels deadly serious, a system built on the most private part of a person, their dreams. You sit on the edge of the dais, water swirling around your ankles. The token in your palm has grown warmer, pulsing like a heartbeat. Across the pool, another archway leads deeper, marked by 2 words carved in simple letters, ad ponam, toward punishment. You look back at the alcoves, the tablets, the winged serpent mosaic reflected on the ceiling. You're deep in the Empire's underworld now, following its secret arteries toward whatever truth waits at the end. You stand, water dripping from your clothes, and cross the pool. The archway breathes cool air against your face. The hum has become a low chant, indistinct but insistent, like a crowd on the other side of a wall. You take one last glance at the dream chamber, then step into the passage beyond, your shadow stretching ahead of you like a guide. The curtain closes behind you with a soft hiss, and for a moment you are suspended in a twilight that feels neither underground nor above it. The air is warmer here, touched with the faint perfume of laurel oil and something sharper, crushed. Myrtle leaves, maybe, or the smoke of an offering long since burned out. Your footsteps echo on smooth marble rather than rough stone now, and the glow ahead resolves into a wide circular chamber bathed in amber light from dozens of recessed oil lamps. At first glance, it looks like a temple. The ceiling rises into a shallow dome painted with constellations, each star inlaid with gold leaf that still catches the light after 2 millennia. The images are not the familiar Greek heroes, but more abstract: scales, chains, a torch, a winged hourglass. Around, the walls stand tall marble statues of hooded figures, their faces veiled, hands extended as if offering invisible gifts. This is not a place of sentencing. It's a place of reflection, maybe even confession. In the center stands a circular dais with a mosaic floor. At its heart is a pattern of interlocking keys, the kind you've seen carved into prison doors in earlier chambers. The keys radiate outward like a sunburst. Around the dais are low benches upholstered in faded crimson cloth, their cushions flattened by centuries. It feels less like a courtroom and more like a waiting room for the soul. You sit for a moment, and the cool stone seeps through your clothing, calming, almost like a cold compress on a fevered brow. On a low table nearby rests a bundle of scrolls tied with leather cords. You unfurl one. It's a list, not of punishments, but of remissions. Names of people pardoned by magistrates, followed by strange notes. Dream sign granted, olive oath fulfilled, bread of mercy accepted. These aren't official Latin legal terms you've heard before. Some historians think they're coded references to rituals performed here, acts of penance so obscure that only a handful of priests or jurists ever knew them. Others argue they're metaphors for bribes, the secret language of clemency. The debates continue, and you smile at the thought of professors arguing about bread of mercy over conference coffee. You rise and walk slowly around the dais. At its far side, a shallow alcove holds a bronze basin of water tinted green from age. Carved into its rim are the words, Lacrimae equitas, tears of justice. Perhaps magistrates or supplicants washed their faces here, or dropped a tear into the water as a symbolic offering. You dip your fingers in. It's surprisingly warm, fed by some unseen spring. You remember the icy basin in the punishment chamber, below, and shiver at the contrast. On the wall opposite the basin hangs a large bronze plaque. Its surface is covered with tiny figures, scenes of trials, executions, and public reconciliations. One panel shows a woman kneeling before a magistrate, her hands on a loaf of bread. Another shows a condemned man carrying a tiny effigy of a goddess. Each is captioned with a brief Latin phrase. The cumulative effect is like a comic strip of mercy. You trace the figures, your fingertips catching on the raised edges, and you think of modern plea bargains and suspended sentences, different language, same dance between power and forgiveness. You notice now that the hooded statues around the room each hold a small item, a scroll, a rod, a key, a feather, a pair of scales. They're like silent jurors embodying different aspects of justice. At the feet of one lies a small pile of tokens like yours, each slightly different. Winged serpents, chained lions, balanced scales. Visitors must have left them here as offerings. You add your second token to the pile. The sound it makes against the others is soft but distinct, like a single note in a silent chord. Beyond the circle of statues, a narrow corridor leads deeper into the temple. The oil lamps thin out, replaced by hanging lanterns painted with olive branches. The air smells fresher, almost like rain, though you're still underground. As you walk, you notice inscriptions carved into the walls at knee height. They're not Latin but Greek, maybe older maxims brought into Rome's legal culture. No man can be judged without being heard. Justice walks with time, not ahead of it. Little reminders for magistrates to slow down before deciding someone's fate. The corridor opens onto a small garden, an impossible garden really, for it seems to thrive under a painted ceiling lit by hidden skylights. Low shrubs of rosemary and laurel fill the air with scent. A narrow channel of water runs between stone benches, fed by a spout shaped like a wolf's head. This must have been the final stop before someone emerged back into the city above, a place to breathe after the oppressive chambers below. You run your hand over the leaves. They're dusty, but alive. Somehow, against all odds, the garden still grows. On one bench sits a small clay figurine no taller than your palm. It's a rough depiction of a bound man, with wings sprouting from his back. Perhaps left by a visitor centuries ago, perhaps a votive offering. You pocket it gently, feeling the grit against your skin. The empire's justice was harsh, but here, you sense its hidden tenderness like a tiger grooming its cub. In the distance, behind a colonnade, you see a flight of steps ascending toward a shaft of light. You know it must lead to the surface. Yet another path veers downward into darkness, marked by a carved sign shaped like a serpent biting its tail. The choice is yours. Ascend into daylight carrying the memory of hidden mercy, or descend to learn what punishment Rome reserved for the unpardonable. You can't help but chuckle at the melodrama, like a video game checkpoint after a boss fight. Still, your feet move toward the darkness. Curiosity wins again. The stairs down are narrower, the air cooler, tinged now with salt. You hear a distant roar, not of crowds but of water. The walls glisten as though lined with mica. This must be the lowest level yet, where legend says Rome kept its strangest penalties. As you descend, you whisper to yourself the Latin words from the plaques, equitas, clementia, disciplina, like charms against what you're about to see. At the final landing, a heavy wooden door bound with bronze bands blocks the way. Its surface is carved with scenes of a river, a boatman and shadowy figures reaching upward. Not the Styx, surely, but maybe some Roman imagination of it. You push the door. It yields with a groan, the sound echoing down a tunnel of black stone. The scent of salt water intensifies, mingled with something like smoke. You step through, your heart quickening, as the Empire's last hidden chamber opens before you. The black stone tunnel closes around you like the throat of some great beast, cool and damp, and the sound of dripping water echoes off its walls in a slow, hypnotic rhythm. Each step you take is softened by a thin layer of sand on the floor, grains crunching faintly under your soles. Ahead, a flicker of blue light pulses as though it's breathing. The scent of salt is stronger now, mixed with a faint tang of iron, like blood diluted 1,000 times in seawater. You reach the end of the tunnel and emerge into a cavernous chamber carved directly into the bedrock, its ceiling low and arched, like a vault. In the center runs a narrow canal of dark water, lit from beneath by hidden braziers, so it glows with an eerie, phosphorescent sheen. On either side, stone platforms extend like docks, lined with iron rings and small piles of rope. It feels more like an underground port than a courtroom. This is the naughty chamber, if the fragmentary inscriptions are to be believed, the place where the Romans practiced one of their strangest punishments. At first glance, you think of the legend of Charon ferrying souls across the Styx, but here the reality is harsher. Carved into the stone walls are reliefs showing bound prisoners in small wooden boats, their eyes blindfolded. One panel shows a man being set adrift with a loaf of bread and a jug of water. Another depicts a magistrate dropping a wax seal into the current, as if authorizing the river itself to judge the accused. Scholars still debate what these images mean. Was it an execution, an exile, a ritual of cleansing? No surviving text explains it fully, but the art leaves little doubt that water played a central role. You walk along the platform, your fingers brushing the cold iron rings. They're pitted with age, but you can still imagine a rope running. Through them, the weight of a boat tugging as it floated away. In one corner, a broken oar leans against the wall, its blade carved with the symbol of a dolphin. The juxtaposition of such gentle imagery with the implication of death or banishment makes you shiver. You joke quietly to yourself that at least they gave you a boat instead of a bus ticket. Near the canal's edge stands a pedestal bearing a marble tablet. Its inscription is fragmentary, ad flumen mittitur non redit. He is sent to the river. He does not return. Another line mentions the bread of forgetting and the cup of silence. Some historians have spun whole theories from these phrases. Perhaps prisoners were given soporific bread and drugged wine before being cast adrift, to fall asleep before drowning. Others think it was a symbolic ritual for disgraced officials, sending them into permanent exile across the sea. Either way, the canal itself becomes a stage, and the Empire plays both judge and executioner. As you stand there, you hear the faint rush of water from a hidden sluice. It enters the canal from a dragon-headed spout, its mouth gaping in eternal roar. The sound is soothing yet ominous, like a white noise machine set to doom. You lean over, seeing your reflection waver in the glowing water, fragmented by ripples. The canal stretches into a tunnel at the far end, disappearing into total darkness. You wonder if it once connected to the Tiber or some hidden reservoir, a literal passage out of Rome for those condemned. On the wall opposite the pedestal hangs a set of wooden masks, their paint faded but still eerie, faces of river gods, nymphs, and spirits with hollow eyes. Perhaps attendants wore them during the ceremony, transforming into actors of a mythological drama. The Romans loved their theatre, after all. You imagine a magistrate dressed as Neptune, intoning the final words, before pushing the boat away, a grim pageant that blurred law and ritual. It's bizarre, but not entirely alien. You think of modern courtroom theatrics and ceremonial robes, how much we still stage justice, rather than simply administer it. A low niche nearby contains a cluster of amphorae sealed with wax. You pry at one and catch a whiff of something sweet and herbal, spiced wine maybe, or an ancient sedative. Did the condemned drink it willingly? Was it a bribe, a mercy, or just part of the show? Historians can only speculate, their papers filled with phrases like possibly and may have. You chuckle softly. Even in the empire's darkest corners, mystery has a better survival rate than truth. You notice a series of small scratches on the stone by your feet, tallies, dozens of them. Someone once stood here counting boats sent off, prisoners dispatched, days spent on duty. It's a tiny human mark in an otherwise monumental space. You run your fingers over the grooves and feel grit under your nails. Whoever carved these? Lines is long gone, but their boredom or grief lingers. At the far end of the chamber, a narrow staircase spirals upward, carved directly into the rock. A faint breeze filters down from above, carrying the scent of pine and open air. But beside the staircase, another tunnel descends even deeper, its entrance flanked by two carved serpents whose tails intertwine. Between them, a plaque reads, Ultima Ratio, the last measure. You're reminded of modern last resorts, the final hidden drawer where the state keeps its sharpest tools. You hesitate, glancing back at the glowing canal. The idea of prisoners drifting into darkness on a drugged boat is both horrifying and strangely peaceful. You imagine the sound of water lapping against wood, the faint smell of laurel oil on your skin, the cold iron ring slipping from your grip. If nothing else, the Romans knew how to make a punishment theatrical enough to haunt the imagination for centuries. You turn back to the twin serpent tunnel. The air flowing from it is cooler, with an undertone of smoke. This must be where the stories of Rome's punishment furnaces come from, half rumor, half archaeological footnote. You can't resist. With a wry smile you mutter, "Here we go again," and start down the steps. Each one is worn in the middle by countless feet, smooth as river stones. The light behind you fades. Ahead glows a dull red, like banked coals, waiting for a bellows. Your heartbeat picks up, but your footsteps stay steady. After all, you've come this far. What's one more secret? The red glow you glimpsed from the stairwell slowly blossoms into a full chamber of low, flickering light. The smell hits you first, smoke mixed with something resinous, like burning pine pitch and old incense. The walls are lined with blackened bricks, and the air is warm enough to bead moisture on your forehead. As you step down the last few stairs, you find yourself in what looks like a subterranean forge crossed with a ritual hall. Braziers line the perimeter, their flames trapped behind lattices of bronze, and thin channels in the floor carry glowing coals from one end of the room to the other, like streams of lava. In the center rises a heavy stone platform, its edges carved, with jagged motifs of flames, serpents, and wings. Around it stand tall iron tripods holding clay urns. Some are sealed, others cracked open, spilling dried herbs that crumble at your touch. The whole place hums with a low vibration, like a furnace breathing in its sleep. You imagine you can hear a faint hiss, a whisper of long-quenched screams, but it could just be the fire licking at oil. This is the rumored punishment furnace chamber, a nickname given by modern scholars who've pieced together fragments of texts about ignis judicium, the fire judgment. Most people think of crucifixion or gladiatorial games when they picture Roman punishments, but here the archaeology suggests something stranger. Reliefs on the far wall show bound figures standing before a brazier, hands extended, while priests or officials in heavy robes pour liquid into the flames. In another scene, a condemned man is made to walk barefoot across glowing coals while holding a bronze scale, a kind of ordeal by fire. Historians still debate whether this was a test of innocence, a ceremonial humiliation, or a punishment reserved For oath-breakers. The inscriptions use words like purgo to cleanse and exendo to inflame, blurring the line between purification and pain. You circle the platform slowly, feeling the heat on your shins. At one corner sits a small anvil, etched with laurel leaves and lightning bolts, its surface pocked and scorched. Next to it lies a hammer so massive you can barely lift it, clearly ceremonial, not practical. You joke under your breath that it's like Thor's hammer, but with a Roman work ethic. Someone in the past wanted a show, not just a sentence. The Romans never missed a chance to blend law with theatre. On the opposite wall, an alcove holds a row of masks similar to the ones in the naughty chamber above. But here, they're painted. In fiery reds and oranges, mouths open wide. Perhaps they represented Vulcan, god of fire, or the spirits of vengeance. You run your fingers along the smooth, warm clay and catch a faint metallic tang, cinnabar maybe, or mercury pigment. Even in death rituals they use toxic beauty. It's a theme you've started noticing. Spectacle above safety. A narrow trench circles the platform filled with ash and small bones, bird bones perhaps, or fragments of ritual offerings. Mixed in are lumps of charred wax, the remnants of votive figurines melted in the flames. You imagine spectators pressing into the edges of the room, holding up oil lamps as the condemned is led to the platform. The brazier would roar, sparks, rising priests chanting. In the background, soldiers would stand with arms crossed, their expressions as blank as the masks. Was this about justice, or just another performance to remind everyone of the empire's power? Scholars, of course, still argue about it. One camp thinks these were actual sentences carried out underground to keep the public from seeing the brutality. Another believes the entire chamber was symbolic, a training space for officials or actors in a ritual drama. Either way, it leaves a chill in your gut even in this heat. You spot a low stone bench by the wall and sit for a moment, letting the warmth seep into your bones. It's almost pleasant, like a sauna, if you forget the context. A small amphora nearby still holds thick, blackened oil that smells faintly of frankincense and myrrh. Did they anoint the condemned? Or did they just use it to feed the fire? No one can say for sure. You joke softly that even here the Romans found a way to make a spa day terrifying. Your gaze falls on a bronze plaque affixed near the main archway. Its lettering is worn but legible. Ultima fides per ignem, the final faith through fire. Beneath it is a list of names and dates, scratched into the metal by different hands over time. Some are in neat Roman capitals, others hurried crooked like graffiti. Maybe guards recorded their shifts or witnesses etched names of those who passed through. It's one of those small, stubborn traces of humanity you keep finding in these chambers. In the far corner, a stairway climbs up into a smaller tunnel. The air drifting down from it is cooler, carrying a faint scent of wet clay. Above the arch is a carved relief of a scales tipped by a feather, Ma'at's symbol from Egypt, though rendered in Roman style. This is your next breadcrumb, a hint of imported rituals, exotic laws pulled into the empire's orbit. You remember the strange crocodile dung sunscreen from earlier and smirk. Rome loved to borrow and remix, even in punishment. You rise, brushing ash from your palms, and cross to the stair. The glow of the braziers falls away behind you as you climb. Each step cools a little more, and the hum of the furnace fades to silence. At the top of the stair, a heavy wooden door studded with bronze bars waits. Its hinges are shaped like wings, feathers curling outward, and a simple iron latch holds it shut. You lift it and push. The door opens onto a dim corridor lined with painted panels. Scenes of Egyptian priests weigh hearts on scales, but instead of Anubis, Roman magistrates stand in judgment. In another panel, a man kneels before a scroll sealed with scarlet wax, the words lex externa, the foreign law. The smell of clay is stronger now, mixed with old ink. You're moving from punishment into paperwork, from fire into bureaucracy. Still, the sense of secrecy grows. You feel like you're peeling back layers of the empire's hidden self, each stranger than the last. You walk on, the corridor narrowing until you can touch both walls at once. The paintings end, replaced by shelves carved into the stone, stacked with brittle tablets and fragments of papyrus sealed in clay jars. Some are labeled in Latin, others in Greek, even one or two in hieroglyphs. This must be an archive, a hidden law library where Rome kept its most obscure statutes and foreign borrowings. Your fingertips brush a jar labeled Poene Egyptia, Egyptian. Punishments. Another reads Secretum Senatus. Whatever lies ahead, it's going to be the empire's strangest legal detour yet. The corridor squeezes you into its narrow belly like a stone throat, each step echoing off rough walls. Your fingertips graze ridges of carved shelves packed with clay tablets sealed in wax, their labels faded, but still carrying faint imprints of Roman capitals. The air here is cooler, dry, and powdery. You taste dust on your tongue mixed with a whisper of old ink. There's a smell like forgotten parchment and rain on marble, as if the corridor itself is a time capsule. The further you move, the clearer the inscriptions become. One shelf holds a row of jars with red seals impressed by a laurel wreath. Another shelf has wooden boxes tied with leather thongs. Inside, thin papyrus scrolls are rolled and labeled with phrases like tabulae praetoriae and cautiones obscurae. A few are written in Greek, others in Egyptian demotic script. This is no mere archive of public law. This is the empire's private playbook. Hidden statutes, foreign borrowings, and experimental punishments stored away from prying eyes. You ease a jar from its niche and feel the brittle clay crumble slightly. The label reads Poenae Provinciae, provincial punishments. Inside, fragments of tablets rattle like dry bones. One bears an outline drawing of a man with his hands bound, standing knee-deep in what looks like mud, crocodiles sketched nearby. A punishment borrowed from the Nile, perhaps? Scholars still debate whether these images were meant as legal precedents or simply curiosities collected by traveling magistrates. Either way, the jar in your hands feels like holding a secret Rome didn't want anyone to see. You place it back gently and drift deeper. On the left wall, a large painted panel appears, more intact than the others. It shows a Roman magistrate seated on a high-backed chair holding a stylus. Before him kneels a foreign emissary offering a scroll. Above their heads is an inscription. Lex externa intra urbs, the external law brought within the city. You can almost hear the negotiations, the soft murmur of interpreters, the scratching of styluses on wax tablets. This is how Rome expanded, not just by sword, but by absorbing the customs, laws, and punishments of those it conquered. A small table stands beneath the panel, strewn with broken wax seals, stamped with exotic symbols. Ankhs, lotus flowers, crescent, moons. Among them you find a seal shaped like a feather tipped by a flame. It's warm to the touch, though there's no fire nearby. Maybe you're imagining it. Or maybe some rituals cling to objects long after they're forgotten. You joke softly that if this were a Netflix series, the prop department would have a field day. To your right, a low arch opens into a circular room no larger than a bathhouse. The ceiling is domed and painted deep blue, sprinkled with golden. Stars, though, much of it flakes away. The center of the floor is inlaid with a mosaic of scales balanced by a sword. Around the edge of the mosaic run Latin words, Secretum Senatus, non in foro. The Senate's secret, not for the forum. This was a closed court, you realize, a hidden tribunal where senators or high magistrates might debate cases too sensitive for public ears. Imagine, you whisper, being tried underground under a painted sky, the empire's fate sealed above your head. Low stone benches line the walls, worn smooth by years of use. You sit briefly, fingers tracing the cool tesserae of the mosaic. It's quieter than any place you've been so far. Even your breathing feels muffled. On one bench sits a small lead box. Inside are tiny rolled scrolls of papyrus, each tied with crimson thread. One unrolls easily in your hand. A list of names paired with brief phrases: theft of secrets, ritual misconduct, insult to the Senate. No punishments are listed, only these accusations. Were they exiled, burned, tested by ordeal? Historians still argue whether these records reflect real trials or ceremonial rehearsals. The ambiguity is almost worse than knowing. On the far side of the chamber, a niche contains a bronze statue of Justitia, the Roman personification of justice. But unlike the familiar image, this one's blindfold is half lifted, and her scales are tipped. In one hand she holds a small oil lamp, its flame long gone. It's unsettling, like catching someone peeking through a curtain. You joke to yourself that she looks like she's thinking, "I'll allow it, but only in secret." Even Rome's goddess of justice gets a backstage pass down here. A narrow stair spirals upward from the niche. The steps are worn, edges rounded, like old coins. As you ascend, the air becomes cooler still, tinged with the scent of damp stone. Halfway up, you notice more paintings on the wall, this time scenes of foreign punishments adopted by Rome, branding with heated symbols from Gaul, burying alive from Carthage, testing truth by holding hot metal from the East. Each is captioned with neat Latin, Poena Gallica sepultura viva ferro candente. It's like a macabre travel guide, Rome's sampler of global retribution. At the top of the stair, a low doorway leads to a chamber whose walls are lined entirely with niches for tablets and scrolls. But unlike before, these are arranged like an index, their headings carved above each column. Divine offenses, military crimes, provincial customs. It's an encyclopedia of hidden justice, neatly categorized. The smell of clay is strongest here, mixed with faint beeswax. From old seals, you can almost taste the secrecy. In the center of the chamber stands a tall square pedestal with a single scroll resting atop it. The scroll is thicker than your arm, its edges gilded. The wax seal is a deep scarlet, stamped with the Senate's emblem. No label marks it. Whatever's inside, it's meant to be the crown jewel of this archive, the Empire's most guarded, legal secret. Your hands hover above it, trembling slightly. Do you open it or do you leave it sealed like a Pandora's box of jurisprudence? You chuckle nervously and whisper to yourself that this is the part in a horror movie where the audience shouts, "Don't do it." But curiosity tugs harder. You're here, in the belly of Rome's hidden law. You've seen the punishments, the rituals, the secret tribunals. What's one more layer? You reach out, fingers brushing the seal. It's warm, almost pulsing, as though some ember of the punishment furnace below has climbed up into this scroll. Behind you, a draft stirs, the dust making the torchlight flicker. The door you came through seems farther away now, shadows stretching longer. The Empire's legal labyrinth has led you here for a reason. You press your palm gently to the seal, feeling the wax soften slightly under your warmth, and prepare to open the scroll that may reveal the strangest hidden justice of all. Your fingers press a little harder, and the scarlet wax crumbles like dried fruit, scattering soft fragments onto the pedestal. The scroll loosens with a sigh, as if it has been holding its breath for 2 millennia. You unroll it carefully. The parchment crackles faintly, its ink so dark it still glistens like wet iron in the torchlight. Columns of Latin characters march down the page with military precision, but here and there a word is written in Greek or a provincial tongue, like small infiltrations into an otherwise Roman text. You skim the opening lines. It's not a law, exactly. It's more like a catalogue of special measures authorized only for emergencies. Some of the entries you recognize from history books: damnatio memoriae, the erasure of a person's name from public record; prescriptio, public outlawing and confiscation of property. But then, the list veers into things you've never heard. Of the dream ordeal of Numidia, the silent burial of Ephesus, trial by labyrinth from an unnamed province. These punishments sound almost mythical, like something from a dark fairy tale. Yet here they're described with bureaucratic neatness: who may authorize them, how long they may last, which magistrates must witness. A marginal note catches your eye, written in a smaller, sharper hand, maybe used but not spoken of. You imagine a magistrate dipping his pen into ink, glancing over his shoulder before adding those words. Historians still argue whether this scroll represents real practice or merely an imaginative compilation by some overzealous scribe. But as you stand here with it unrolled, breathing the same air it does, you can feel its weight like a lead coin in your palm. You run your fingers down a column titled Poena Somni, the punishment of dreams. It details a process by which a condemned person is deprived of sleep for 7 nights, then given a potion to walk in visions and confess to crimes not yet committed. The description is clinical, but your skin crawls. Imagine a court sentence that invades your dreams. You whisper to yourself that even modern reality TV producers haven't thought of something this wild. Lower down, another entry describes tacita sepultura, silent burial. No audience, no announcement, just a quiet internment beneath the floor. To a temple at night. The text specifies the precise number of steps the attendants must take, the absence of any spoken word, the final sprinkle of salt and ashes. It's as if the law itself wanted to erase the memory of the act while still performing it. The Romans were good at theatre, you think, but they were even better at secrecy. A faint breeze stirs the torch flames. Somewhere deeper in the chamber, a door creaks. You turn, half expecting a guard from the past to step out. Nothing, only shadows shifting along the shelves. You smile nervously and murmur a joke. Okay, if a toga-clad lawyer jumps out, I'm running. The scroll continues, describing how foreign punishments were adapted with Roman efficiency. The ordeal of crocodiles from Egypt, the trial of salt and coals from the northern tribes, the mirror of truth from some eastern cult, where the accused stared at a polished bronze disc until their eyes watered and their confession spilled out. Each practice is annotated with Latin footnotes, like an ancient legal blog. Some passages are scratched out, replaced by newer handwriting, evidence of centuries of updates. You get the impression of a living document, an evolving code of secret. Justice, a paragraph near the end, stops you cold. It describes the chamber of the vanished, a room prepared under the Senate House itself where certain offenders were held until their presence ceased. No details, no outcome, just that phrase. You picture a stone cell, no exit, the prisoner slowly fading from records and from memory. Even now, scholars debate whether this was metaphorical or literal. You shiver and hug yourself, feeling the weight of the scroll's knowledge settle into your bones. You roll the scroll closed slowly, the parchment crackling like a sleeping animal. The wax seal pieces crunch softly under your boot. You're not sure whether you've uncovered something valuable or simply dipped your hands into a well of shadows. But one thing is clear. This was Rome's hidden justice, the things it couldn't admit but still performed. You glance at the statue of Justitia nearby. Her half-lifted blindfold seems to meet your gaze knowingly. On a nearby shelf, you notice a thin codex, more modern than the scroll, bound with iron clasps. Its title reads Commentarii Arcani, Secret Commentaries. You flip it open and find notes written by later scholars trying to interpret the scroll you just read. Some passages end with question marks or little sketches of raised eyebrows. Others simply write incertum, uncertain. Across centuries, people have been as baffled as you are now. That's oddly comforting. Your torch sputters, throwing a brief shower of sparks. The shadows on the mosaic floor look like reaching hands. You remember with a wry grin how at the start of tonight's journey you invited everyone to dim the lights and turn on a fan for that soft background hum. Right now, a fan would be the least of your concerns. But the tone of your voice stays. Soft, almost teasing, because that's what keeps you grounded as you wander deeper into this labyrinth of secret punishments. You slide the scroll back onto its pedestal, pressing the edges together so it looks sealed again. A small wicked thought crosses your mind. Maybe you should leave a sticky note in English. Don't open unless you like nightmares. But you restrain yourself. This place deserves a little more respect, even from your sleep-deprived humor. Narrow passage opens behind the pedestal, framed by carved ivy leaves. It slopes downward, the air warmer and heavier. Somewhere ahead you hear a faint trickle of water and the echo of your own footsteps multiplied. This must lead to the core of the archive, the final layer where punishment and ritual blur entirely. You take a breath, adjust your grip on the torch and step forward into the next secret, your shadow stretching long behind you like an exclamation point in the dim light. The passage dips lower, your torchlight now glinting off damp stone rather than dry marble. The air thickens, tinged with minerals and something like old wine, fermented, secretive. The carved ivy leaves give way to a new motif. Chains and keys, etched into the walls but stylized, like vines twisting into locks. You trail your fingers over them, and they feel warmer than the surrounding rock, as if memory itself had heat. Ahead, the tunnel opens into a chamber no larger than a chapel, but twice as unsettling. The ceiling arches low, painted in faded ochres and muted greens, a tableau of blindfolded figures holding scales, each scale tipped unevenly. In the center stands a circular platform of black basalt. Around its edge, iron rings are set into the floor like a clock's numbers. It's not hard to guess what they were for. You step onto the platform, your footsteps echoing in a strange rhythm. The room seems designed to distort sound. Every noise you make returns as a whisper from some other direction. Historians have speculated about this chamber for decades. Some think it was an early form of solitary confinement, designed to unnerve a prisoner. Others call it the Hall of Appeals, where condemned men were given a final chance to beg a magistrate for mercy under disorienting conditions. The truth, as usual, sits somewhere between rumor and footnote. At the far end of the room, a recess in the wall holds 3 bronze masks. Each is larger than life, one weeping, one snarling, one expressionless. Their eyes are hollow, but you feel them watching. In some accounts, accused persons had to speak through these masks, to address unseen judges hidden behind them. Imagine pleading for your life into a metal face, your words funneled into darkness. You can't help thinking of those modern voicemail menus. Press 1 if you're guilty, press 2 if you're innocent. Except here, no one on the other side wants to help you. A narrow channel of water runs around the platform, fed by a small dragon's head spout. The water is cool and perfectly clear, but flecked with what looks like gold dust. It ripples softly, as if stirred by breath. Some believe this channel was part of a purification ritual. The accused would wash their hands before speaking, a symbolic act of cleansing. Others claim it carried mild sedatives or hallucinogens meant to loosen tongues. The Romans loved a practical shortcut. Why wait for a confession when you can drug your suspect into babbling it? You crouch by the channel, touching the water. It's cool but leaves a faint shimmer on your skin like crushed mica. You rub your fingers together and whisper, "This is the original glitter bomb." The humor steadies you for a moment before the hush of the chamber presses back in. On the walls behind the masks are faint inscriptions, barely visible by torchlight. You lean closer and make out phrases. Silentium servatur. Silence is kept. Nox omnia audit. The night hears. Oh, chilling mottos for a courtroom, or perhaps for a place of punishment disguised as judgment. Scholars still debate whether this chamber was used officially or clandestinely. One eccentric historian once proposed it was never used at all, built only as a threat, a physical embodiment of secret justice, so feared that its very existence coerced obedience. You find that idea strangely elegant, like a haunted house built by a government to scare people straight. Your footsteps echo as you circle the platform. You imagine a man, in a threadbare toga standing where you are, chained to one of the rings looking up at those bronze masks. He whispers something, a plea, a curse, and the whisper bounces around the chamber like a bird trapped under a dome. The judges behind the masks remain silent, letting the echoes wear him down. A punishment of sound and emptiness rather than pain. That's very Roman too. Near the entrance stands a lectern carved from oak, blackened with age. No scrolls remain, only a groove where one might have rested. Perhaps this is where the charges were read. You picture a clerk with a stylus, scratching notes while trying not to inhale the glittering water vapor. Maybe he doodled tiny. Scales in the margin out of boredom. Even secret justice has its paperwork. You pause under the arch and listen. The chamber hums faintly, not from any visible source, but from the architecture itself. The Romans were masters of acoustics. There, amphitheaters could carry a whisper to the back row. Here they inverted that trick, making a whisper seem like a shout in your own ears. Yet nothing escapes outside. You test it, murmuring a joke. So, is there an exit interview after this? The sound folds back on you, multiplied, eerie, but also absurd. Beyond the platform, a low stair spirals down to yet another level. The steps are worn, their edges rounded by centuries of passage. A small iron gate stands at the top, but its lock has rusted open. You grip the railing, cool and slick under your palm, and take the first step downward. The air smells of wet stone and old parchment, a library buried under a dungeon or a dungeon disguised as a library. As you descend, you catch glimpses of fresco fragments on the stairwell walls, figures in togas holding strange implements, half obscured by peeling plaster. One looks like a balance scale, another like a mirror. A third shows a figure placing a hand on another's head, eyes closed, a beam of painted light between them. Ritual, hypnosis. The Romans had 1,000 ways to blend religion and law. You reach a landing where the stair splits into 2 tunnels, one lit faintly by flickering lamps, the other swallowed in darkness. You're aware of your heartbeat, steady, but slower now. The hush of the chamber above still clinging to you like damp fabric. You take a breath, crack a small smile to your unseen audience and say softly, "Guess we're going deeper, right?" You choose the lamplit tunnel. Its floor slopes gently, the walls narrowing, the scent of incense returning. The deeper you go, the more you feel like you're not just exploring a ruin, but walking inside the mind of a civilization. Its fears, its fantasies of control, its need to make even punishment a performance. In another few steps, the tunnel opens into a new space where the glow is warmer and the air thicker. You pause at the threshold, letting your eyes adjust, ready to see what hidden Roman justice looks like when it turns into ritual completely. The tunnel's glow steadies, soft and amber, like candlelight trapped inside honey. You step out of the narrow passage and into a room that feels utterly unlike the cold stone chambers above. The air here is warmer, drier, perfumed faintly with resin and citrus. For a moment you think you've stumbled into a forgotten temple, but as your eyes adjust you realize it's something stranger. The chamber is circular, domed, its walls lined with niches filled not with statues of gods but with tablets. Hundreds of them stacked like books on shelves carved directly into the stone. Each tablet bears a name, a charge and a verdict, etched in neat Latin script. Some are cracked, some covered in waxy residue, as if sealed again and again. This, you suspect, is the archive, the silent memory of everything judged, whispered, or broken here. In the center stands a low stone basin, no larger than a table filled with oil. Its surface reflects the dome above like black glass. Suspended above it by thin chains is a small bronze cage containing a single lamp. The flame inside burns steadily without smoke. It paints trembling gold on the walls, as though every inscription is alive. You crouch to read one of the tablets at random. The Latin is simple but cutting. Marcus Lucilius, false witness, 3 nights in the hall, confessed. Another, Alia Crispina, treasonous letters, 5 nights, silence maintained, and another, older still, unknown slave, poisoning, 1 night. Death after release. Your stomach knots a little. So the hall was not just for show. At the far side of the chamber, a raised dais holds a chair, not a throne but a magistrate's seat, its back carved with owls and laurels. It faces the basin, as if whoever sat there presided over a ritual involving the oil and the lamp. Behind the chair is a narrow doorway shrouded by a faded red curtain. No other exit. You approach the basin. The oil's surface is so still it seems solid. When you lean over, your reflection looks back at you, torchlight flickering in your eyes. For an instant, it's like seeing yourself in a judge's gaze. You whisper, "All rise." But the joke dies in your throat. The acoustics here are different, soft absorbing sound rather than throwing it back. This room is meant for listening, not intimidation. On the rim of the basin are 3 bronze cups. They're small, shallow, shaped like open hands. One is stained dark, another polished bright, the third flecked with green patina. You imagine them being used in a ritual. Oil poured, names read, verdicts sealed into the tablets on the walls. The Romans like to give even bureaucracy a theatrical edge. You glance back at the curtain. A faint draft moves it as if someone just slipped behind. The idea sends a quick chill along your spine. But you're alone. Of course you're alone. Still you find yourself speaking softly, as though addressing a hidden audience. "If anyone's listening, I'm just a visitor. Don't add my tablet yet." On a small ledge near the magistrate's seat, a wax tablet lies open. It's blank except for a single line scratched into the top margin. Veritas liberabit vos. The truth will set you free. Familiar words, but here they sound less like a promise and more like a dare. You take one last slow look at the chamber. The rows of tablets, the basin of oil, the silent chair. It's like the inner heart of a machine built to extract secrets, a place where silence itself was a verdict. You realize you're breathing more quietly now, matching the room's hush. Then the curtain shifts again, this time more distinctly. You're sure you heard fabric slide against stone. Beyond it, the air smells of frankincense and something metallic. You lift your torch and step closer. The curtain feels cool and slightly oily under your fingers. When you push it aside, you glimpse a narrow stair descending into total darkness. A sign carved above the doorway reads, Descensus ad ultimam vocem. Descent to the final voice. You glance back at the lamplit chamber, its tablets, its still oil, its silent magistrate's seat, and then into the stair's black mouth. You can't resist. You smile faintly, a whisper for the invisible audience that's followed. You through each chamber. Looks like we're about to hear what Rome kept at the very bottom. You take the first step down. The sound of your footfall disappears instantly, swallowed by the dark. The stair curves away, and with each step, the scent of incense fades, replaced by something cooler, wetter, and older. This feels less like a prison or a court now, and more like a catacomb, or a confession you've been walking toward without realizing. Down below, a dim glow flickers. Not amber, not torchlight, but pale and bluish, like moonlight trapped underground. Whatever waits at the bottom, it's not another hall of records, it's something else entirely. You tighten your grip on the torch and keep going. The stair tightens as you descend, each step worn into a shallow curve by countless feet. The walls are no longer smooth marble or orderly brickwork, but rough-cut tufa, damp and crumbly under your fingertips. Water beads on the ceiling, dripping, softly at irregular intervals, a sound like a slow heartbeat echoing in the dark. The further you go, the less your own fire seems to matter. The bluish glow you saw above has begun to rise up from below, casting your shadow upward in strange, slanted shapes. When you reach the bottom, the stair opens into a cavern so wide it takes your breath. It isn't man-made at all, at least not in the same way as the rooms above. This is a natural hollow in the earth, and the Romans simply appropriated it. The glow comes from hundreds of small bowls arranged in concentric circles across the floor. Each bowl is filled with water, and above each floats a thin layer of some mineral that catches the faintest light and turns it into pale blue shimmer. In the very center stands a stone plinth, waist-high, with a shallow groove cut around its top. You edge closer, your footsteps making no echo. The silence here is almost total, as if the air itself were muffled. Even your breathing feels absorbed, and you find yourself whispering without meaning to. On the plinth lies a bronze mask, featureless, but for two almond-shaped holes where the eyes should be. Its surface is pitted, but you can still make out engraved laurels at the temples. Someone has placed a sprig of dried myrtle across its mouth. The inscription at the base reads, Vox ultima, hic finis est, the final voice. This is the end. You picture a condemned Roman brought here, mask lowered onto their face, standing in the glow of the bowls while magistrates above waited for a confession. Did the mask change the sound of their speech? Did it make the voice echo like someone else's? Did the bowls act as a sort of primitive amplifier, or just a ritual meant to unnerve? You can almost hear a quavering whisper, half-imagined, ego confitia. One of the bowls near your foot trembles as a droplet falls into it. The blue shimmer ripples outward. In your mind's eye you see the scene centuries ago, a prisoner, a priest, a scribe taking down every word with a stylus. All the upper levels were for intimidation. This was for extraction, for making people believe the earth itself listened. You crouch and dip your fingers into one of the bowls. The water is ice cold and leaves a faint salty tang on your skin. Your reflection in the rippling blue is warped, the eyes too large. Nice mood lighting, you murmur, trying to shake off a shiver. Very ASMR. Your laugh dies quickly in the heavy air. Across the cavern, a narrow stone bridge leads to a darker recess. Carved on the lintel above it, ad libertas per silentium, to freedom through silence. This was the final stage, perhaps, where those who refused to speak were taken. Some historians still debate whether such a place truly existed, or whether it's just a story passed down to frightened senators and slaves alike. Standing here, though, you feel its reality in your bones. As you cross the bridge, the bowls, glow fades behind you. The passage ahead is lower, forcing you to duck, and the smell changes again, iron, clay, and something faintly herbal, like crushed mint. You feel the weight of the earth above your head, the thickness of history pressing down. At the end of the passage, you emerge into a small circular chamber, no wider than a bedroom. In its center sits a single stone bench. Above it, a shaft rises straight up, invisible beyond the first few feet. You realize it's a speaking tube, a direct line to somewhere far above. Perhaps the forum, perhaps a hidden room where magistrates could listen unseen. You sit on the bench. The stone is cold and slightly concave, worn by countless others. You tilt your head up and whisper, "Hello?" Your voice drifts upward, vanishing. A moment later, impossibly faint, you hear your own whisper return, distorted. "Hello?" It's your voice, but also not. For a heartbeat, it feels as if the empire itself just spoke back to you. You stand, brushing dust from your hands. Whatever this place was meant to do, it's done its work on you. The layers of secrecy, the rituals of oil and water and silence, they weren't just about punishment. They were about power, the kind of power that makes truth feel like something you must offer up willingly. As you turn to leave, a faint tremor moves through the floor. Maybe a train far above, maybe just your imagination. The bowls out in the cavern flicker like stars winking. You think of the wax tablets in the archive, each name etched and sealed, and wonder how many never made it back up these stairs. You whisper a small modern joke, mostly to steady yourself. "I'd give this 5 stars on TripAdvisor, but the check-in process is brutal." Then you start back toward the stair, the glow fading behind you, the mask's blank gaze following in your mind's eye. The steps ahead climb back toward the red curtain, the magistrate's chair, and the oil basin. You can already feel the air warming as you ascend, but some part of you knows you're not quite done. There's still one more layer of this hidden justice waiting above, a final revelation before the story can close its circle. You keep climbing, your hand trailing along the damp stone, the last echoes of your distorted whisper still brushing your ears like a ghost. The stairs return you, one careful step at a time, to the carved chamber above. The oil basin is still there, its surface smooth as polished marble, catching the flicker of your torch. You pause a moment to let your eyes adjust, breathing in the faint scent of frankincense that still lingers like a ghost from the upper rooms. The red curtain ahead looks heavier now, as though it's absorbed the weight of everything you've seen below. You reach for it slowly, thumb brushing over its edge. The fabric is thick, woven with subtle patterns of scales and feathers, dragons and eagles entwined. It feels oddly warm under your fingers. You push it aside, and another chamber unfurls before you. But this one isn't like any of the others. It's a library, but not the kind of library that welcomes daylight or visitors. The walls are lined with shelves of wax tablets and papyrus, rolls stacked in neat cubbies. No titles mark them, no neat labels, only a coded system of knots in crimson thread. The ceiling is low, supported by stout wooden beams carved with miniature fasces and laurel wreaths. In the center stands a large wooden desk, its surface arranged with eerie precision. A stylus here, a dish of powdered ink there, a small bronze bell shaped like a tortoise. An oil lamp burns low, its wick giving off the faint smell of olives. There's no one here, but the air feels thick with presence, as if the scribes who once worked these tables never fully left. You step closer and see one tablet left open. Its wax is scarred with fresh marks, not yet smoothed out. Your Latin is rusty, but you can make out enough. Lists of names, crimes, dates, and next to each a set of small symbols. You recognize the scales of justice, a dagger, a droplet, a key. Codes, perhaps, for punishments or fates. This isn't just a library. It's an archive of sentences, a map of hidden decisions. You run your fingertip lightly across the wax. It's cool but slightly tacky, like skin. A shiver crawls down your spine. This is where the magistrate's whispers ended up. The bowls of water and the bronze mask below were only the performance. Here was the record, stripped of ceremony. and stored like cargo. You imagine a scribe here at midnight, stylus scratching, recording every confession or refusal, every secret name. Perhaps the magistrate sat across from him, dictating in a whisper. Perhaps the emperor himself came down, candle in hand, to inspect these lists like a modern CEO scrolling through an inbox at 3 a.m. The thought makes you smile wryly. Inbox 0, but for doom. On a lower shelf, you notice a stack of wax, tablets without any writing at all, blank slates waiting. Beside them lies a small ivory roller carved with the head of Janus, the two-faced god. The symbolism isn't subtle. Justice here had two faces too, one for the public, one for the private. Historians still debate what these archives truly meant. Were they official records or blackmail material, a way to keep senators obedient? You pick up the roller and feel its smoothness under your thumb. For a moment, you're tempted to smooth the wax on the open tablet, erase the names, but the thought of disturbing it feels sacrilegious, like tearing a page out of a spell book. You set the roller back down gently. At the far end of the room, a small alcove opens, lined with frescoes. They're faded but still visible. Scenes of judges holding scales, of bound figures kneeling, of a robed woman with a covered head holding a torch. Not the usual Justitia, blindfolded with scales. Here she peers out from under her hood, one eye open. A little ironic, you think, that the Romans painted justice as someone who only pretends not to see. The frescoes are cracked in places, revealing older layers beneath. You lean in and can just make out an earlier image. A wolf, a bundle of rods, a curved blade, layers upon layers like the empire itself. You brush a bit of dust away and mutter, "Nothing like a little decor update to match your evolving brand." On a side table sits a small lead box sealed with red wax. A tag tied to it bears the word Somnia, dreams. Your heart gives a small kick. Could this be related to the powders and rituals described upstairs? Was this the emperor's private store of something to blur the lines between truth and vision? Or maybe just a collection of dream records, confessions from the subconscious? No one knows. No one's opened it in centuries. You resist the urge to pry it open. Instead, you take a slow breath, letting the cool, dusty air settle in your lungs. This chamber isn't about spectacle. It's about memory. Who is remembered, how, and under whose control? The marble halls above might impress visiting dignitaries, but this was the real heart of Roman justice. A dark room where names were written in wax, decisions etched in silence. You step back from the desk, glancing once more at the open tablet. Some of the names have small crosses next to them. Others are underlined twice. A modern mind leaps to conclusions. Executed, exiled, spared. But the code remains opaque. Maybe that's the point. As long as only a few knew the meaning, power stayed concentrated. You exhale softly. "Okay," you whisper. "Hidden. Justice, we see you." You slide your hands into your sleeves and glance at the curtain on the opposite side of the room. It glows faintly, the way the previous curtains did before opening into deeper mysteries. There's a sense now of moving toward the end of something, like the last movement of a symphony. The glow is golden this time, not red, warmer, softer. You're aware of how quiet your footsteps have become, how your breathing matches the faint drip somewhere far below. You think of all the little jokes you've made, about TripAdvisor, about inbox doom, and realize you've been doing what Romans themselves did, using humor as a shield against the machinery of power. It's comforting, in a way, to feel that continuity. You reach the glowing curtain, fingers brushing its edge. It feels lighter than the others, almost like silk, and smells faintly of honey and crushed laurel. Beyond it lies what must be the final chamber, the innermost sanctum of this hidden system. You take one more slow breath, steadying yourself. The lamp on the desk sputters and goes out as if on cue. Only the glow ahead remains. Your pulse slows, your shoulders drop. You're ready to step through and see what secret waits beyond. And then, as always, you step forward, into the light. Warm amber light bathes you as the curtain slips from your fingers. This last chamber is unlike any you've entered before. Gone are the dark wood panels and coded archives. Here the walls are curved and smooth, plastered in pale ochre, painted with delicate vines and tiny birds in flight. It's quiet, almost womb-like, a hidden heart beating behind layers of marble and lore. At the center of the room stands a single marble chair, more like a wide bench than a throne. Its arms are carved into crouching lions, their manes flowing, into scrollwork that spirals toward the floor. The seat is covered by a folded wool cloak dyed deep saffron, worn thin at the edges. Someone once sat here regularly. The stone around it is polished to a shine by sandals long gone. You step closer and notice the floor inlaid with a mosaic. Tiny tesserae of blue, green and gold form an image of the goddess Nemesis, winged and serene, holding a measuring rod in one hand and a bridle in the other. Around her, scenes unfold. Soldiers kneeling, senators arguing, merchants weighing coins. Justice not as blind, but as an active force, a rider holding the reins. You crouch down, fingers brushing the cool mosaic. The small stones feel like teeth beneath your skin. This was no mere decoration. This was a message to whoever sat here. You're not the master, you're the instrument. Or maybe it was a warning to all who entered, a reminder that decisions here echoed beyond marble walls. Historians still debate what this chamber's true function was, a private tribunal for the emperor, or a ceremonial space where final pardons and condemnations were whispered. On a low shelf behind the chair sits a set of objects, a small bronze scale, its pans empty but polished, a bundle of sealed wax tablets tied with black thread, a curved knife with an ivory handle, clearly ceremonial, its blade etched with laurel leaves and the words Silentium Custodi. Keep silence. You smile wryly, HR's confidentiality policy, but make it ancient. The air here is warmer, heavier, laced with the scent of beeswax and laurel smoke. You can almost hear faint murmurs, echoes of voices that once filled the space. Perhaps petitions for mercy, confessions, or secret verdicts, never meant for public ears. The chamber feels like a throat, and you're standing where words once passed from lips to fate. You sit gingerly on the edge of the marble chair. It's surprisingly comfortable, the wool cloak soft against your palms. You imagine the emperor. Here at night, a single oil lamp flickering, stylus in hand, the sealed tablets waiting. Power distilled into silence, decisions made with no witnesses. Even a man who commanded legions needed a quiet room to weigh what could not be said aloud. On the wall opposite, another fresco draws your eye. It shows a bridge at night, torches flickering, a procession of hooded figures carrying bundles toward the river. At the far end stands a woman with her hand raised, palm outward, as though stopping or blessing them. Below, in tiny Latin letters, a phrase, quod sub aqua, mane sub aqua. What is underwater stays underwater. You murmur it softly and feel a shiver run down your spine. Some scholars believe this is a reference to the Tiber's use as a place of secret executions or disposals. Others argue it's metaphorical, a warning to keep state secrets buried. Either way, the image lingers. In your mind's eye, you see those hooded figures crossing the bridge, the quiet splash of oars, the way a city can hold its breath while something vanishes into darkness. Beside the fresco hangs a bronze mirror. Its surface is tarnished, but as you lean closer, you catch your own reflection warped and dim. For a moment, it's as if you're seeing yourself through Roman eyes, a visitor, a petitioner, another name on a wax tablet. You tilt it slightly, and the glow of the room wavers across your face like water. You can't help but chuckle softly. Here I am, the ASMR tourist of forbidden justice, you whisper. If only TripAdvisor had a category for this. Your voice sounds small, swallowed by the curved walls. It's a reminder that even as you narrate, you're part of the story's echo chamber now. You rise from the chair and walk slowly around the perimeter. Your fingertips trace the vines painted on the plaster. They curl and loop like writing, like the code of some forgotten legal system. One leaf hides a tiny painted owl. Another hides a fox. Someone took care to weave sly symbols into these walls, like a lawyer's footnotes in the margins. Near the exit, you find a niche holding a clay lamp. Its spout shaped like a wolf's head, its body stamped with the initials SPQR. The wick still smolders faintly, though you know that's impossible. Perhaps it's just the scent of laurel tricking you. Still, it feels as if the room is alive, breathing, reluctant to let you go. You stand in the center once more, looking from the mosaic under your feet to the sealed tablets, the mirror, the fresco of the bridge. All these layers of hidden justice, all these quiet decisions that shaped an empire. You realize how much of what you've seen tonight has been about vulnerability. Emperors arranging their night lanterns, magistrates carving codes into wax, scribes working by oil light. Power isn't a fortress. It's a series of rooms like this, each more secret than the last. The doorway ahead is framed by 2 columns painted with gold spirals. Beyond it, you glimpse only darkness. But the air drifting in feels cooler, fresher, like night air from outside. Perhaps this is the way back to the surface. Perhaps it's one more chamber, a final test. You draw a long, slow breath. Your hand rests on the column, feeling the gold paint flake slightly under your skin. You think of all the details you'll remember. The dragon's mouth fountain, the wax tablets, the goddess with one eye open. Each fragment a tile in your own mosaic of this journey. A soft hum escapes your throat, almost a lullaby. It feels appropriate here, where silence has always been part of the ritual. You let it vibrate in your chest as you step toward the exit, the glow of the chamber behind you fading. And just before you pass between the columns, you glance back one last time. The marble chair, the mosaic, the fresco, all still, waiting, as if they've been watching you as much as you've been watching them. Then you step forward, into the cool breath of the corridor, carrying the empire's hidden justice with you like a quiet weight in your palms. The corridor beyond the columns stretches like a vein of cool stone. The air shifts, scented now with damp earth instead of incense, and the faint sound of water echoes from somewhere ahead. You walk slowly, your sandals whispering over the marble. It's darker here, but pinpricks of light glimmer at regular intervals, tiny oil lamps set into niches like stars in a subterranean sky. As you move forward, the corridor bends downward in a gentle slope. The walls change from smooth plaster to rough-hewn rock, streaked with mineral veins that glint faintly. This is no longer palace architecture. This is the underworld of Rome itself, the hidden arteries where decisions became deeds. Your fingers trail along the stone, cool and damp, as though touching the bones of the city. The slope leads you to a low chamber carved directly into the rock. It's circular, its ceiling domed and painted deep blue with scattered flecks of shell gold that mimic constellations. In the center sits a round pool, fed by a trickling stream that spills from the mouth of a carved lion. The water glows faintly. In the lamplight, rippling like liquid bronze, you kneel by the edge of the pool, inhaling the cool air rising from it. A faint sweetness lingers, like crushed herbs or rain on marble. Some historians believe hidden chambers like this were used for ritual purifications, secret oaths, or even executions disguised as ceremonies. Others insist they were private sanctuaries, places where rulers came to shed their public selves. The debate persists and you smile. This is exactly the kind of mystery that keeps you sneaking into history at bedtime. You dip your fingers into the water. It's cold enough to make you shiver, but also strangely soft, like silk. As droplets slide down your wrist, you imagine the magistrates or emperors who once did the same, cleansing hands before signing a verdict, or before slipping away into a forbidden rendezvous. The idea makes you chuckle softly. Even the most powerful men of Rome might have needed a bedtime hand-wash before doling out hidden justice. Across the pool stands a small altar. It's little more than a stone block, but on it rests a bronze bowl filled with laurel leaves, a clay figurine of Nemesis, and a thin roll of parchment tied with black ribbon. You don't untie it. Just seeing it feels like trespassing. Still, you can imagine what it might contain: a list of names, a prayer for mercy, a record of crimes no one dared to write in public. Above the altar, carved into the rock, is a Latin phrase ubi silentium ibi veritas. Where silence is, there is truth. You murmur it aloud and hear your own voice bounce back from the domed ceiling. It sounds softer than you expected, like a lullaby. You settle down on the cool stone floor, your back against the wall. The sound of the trickling stream and your own breathing blend into a steady rhythm. You feel your heartbeat slow, your eyes adjusting to the low golden light. Around you, the painted stars seem to shimmer faintly, as though the ceiling is breathing with you. This is the Empire's last hidden room, the place where the law's mask falls away, where power and vulnerability meet. You think of all the little details that brought you here. The grooves carved into walls like secret calendars, the scrolls tied with crimson thread, the fresco of the bridge at night. Together they form a mosaic of Rome, not as marble grandeur, but as whispered rituals and hidden acts. You smile to yourself. Not bad for a bedtime story, you whisper, although you definitely wouldn't survive if you stumbled in here uninvited. The thought makes you laugh softly, the sound echoing like a small bird in the cavern. Gradually your voice trails off. You let the silence of the chamber wrap around you like a blanket. The drip of the water becomes a metronome, the painted stars. Plur, and the weight of centuries lifts from your shoulders. You feel almost drowsy, as though the room itself is exhaling sleep into your lungs. Your head tips back against the wall. You can still picture the emperor sitting by a similar pool, writing secret verses on wax tablets, burning them at dawn, or a magistrate dipping a hand into the water before pronouncing a hidden verdict. Power, secrecy, ritual, woven together, like the vines on the plaster walls above. The oil lamps flicker lower now, their glow softening. Shadows stretch across the pool, folding the altar into darkness. The painted stars overhead seem to drift farther away, until they're just faint, specks on a parchment sky. Your breathing slows to match the hush of the chamber, and then, like the closing of a book, the images begin to fade. The marble chair, the goddess Nemesis, the fresco of the bridge. They recede into the quiet dark, leaving only a gentle echo in your mind. It's not frightening. It's comforting, like sliding under a blanket after a long day. You whisper one last thought. Hidden justice, hidden stories, hidden people. It drifts away on your breath, a small offering to the ghosts of this place. Your eyes close. You hear the trickle of water, the faint rustle of laurel leaves, the hush of an empire asleep. Everything slows, softens, becomes a murmur. The chamber dissolves into candlelight, then into a warm darkness that feels like night itself. You exhale, and the world exhales with you. End of script, sweet dreams.